So imagine you got somebody that worked at Raytheon, has access to pretty much everything, and then decides to be a whistleblower.
I started to paint this picture that everybody here is bamboozled. Nobody here has a clue what's actually going on.
What do you think was actually going on?
Directed energy weapons platforms. We've had leaders, American leaders themselves, multiple times threaten other nation states with earthquakes if they didn't get in line to manipulate. They're in a very powerful and privileged position.
When you make a claim saying Joe Biden said he's going to have that earthquake, immediately causes you to lose credibility to zero.
No, not at all. $500 billion.
$500 billion.
It's an absurd number.
So you think the idea right now to read people's thoughts, that technology exists?
Absolutely.
I feel like I played poker for the last hour and 15 minutes. You know what's the one thing a lot of people are very curious about? There's a lot of stories and theories about this place, Antarctica, South Pole. So imagine you got somebody that worked at Raytheon, has access to pretty much everything, gets assigned to go work South Pole from 2010, 2011, and then decides to be a whistleblower to come out and say, here's what I learned. And he's a former a remote viewer, and I may say, what's a remote viewer? It's something that you're seeing all over the place tied to the CIA, is the practice of seeking impressions about a distant or unseen subject, supposedly sending or sensing with the mind. Typically, a remote viewer is expected to give information about an object, event, person, or location that is hidden from physical view and separated at some distance. In the early 1970s, the CIA experimented with applications of remote view and intelligence gathering. Government agencies, including the Department of Defense, use remote viewers to obtain intelligence information. He came out 3 months ago, did a podcast with, I believe, Sean Ryan, sharing some of this information as a whistleblower. And you will not find anything on him out there. If you go try to look for interviews, he's only done one. And it was 35 minutes, very short, with Sean Ryan. This has been a topic that's been coming up. I asked him to come on the podcast. He was kind enough to say yes. You know, when it comes onto Antarctica, I got a lot of questions here I want to go through. You know, your people are talking about you, what your motive is to do this. I think it's important for the audience to know this because sometimes people will say, well, I want to come and tell my story. For $28,000, I'll tell my story. Or, hey, I want to promote my book, or I want to promote a movie, or I want to promote a documentary, or I want to promote something, or give me the link to my website, or have them come to my podcast. You're asking for nothing. You're not asking for anything in return. And to me, that gains trust from your end because there's not a motive in it. I'm a pretty skeptical guy on why people are doing certain things to get the eyeballs that they're getting, but none of those red flags came about. Others, maybe later on I'll ask you about it because I want to see what you'll say about it. But having said that, appreciate you for coming out.
Thank you for having me, sir. I do appreciate the interest.
I'm very interested. So basic question, background before going to you choosing to be a whistleblower. The only thing I can find is the 1 year with Raytheon when you went to Antarctica, South Pole, and you did what you did. Give me a little bit prior to that. What did you do prior to working with Raytheon?
Prior to working for Raytheon, I had a company on Long Island for myself for a bit, doing plumbing and heating repairs and a lot of emergency service calls. Prior to that, I was directly employed by some of the other, I guess you'd say, larger plumbing and heating contractors in the greater Long Island area. I worked, my clientele, I would say, was a bit on the special side. I seem to have been working for the owners and operators of some of said military-industrial complex corporations.
This is pre-Raytheon.
Correct, sir.
Okay.
I had been in a fistful of facilities on Long Island that I would say were above top secret, to the point of taking extremely long elevator rides to get to the basements. One facility in particular that I'm thinking of is in Roslyn, Long Island, called the Paul Corporation. Mm-hmm. Anybody who looks into who Dr. Paul was will find that he was big with the Manhattan Project, and so was his company. These were the types of folks that I worked for, the facilities that I worked in, and having walked the path I've walked at this point, I would just say that at the time that things were happening in my direct firsthand experience in chronological order that it appeared, everything seemed benign. But I got to a certain point in my life, post South Pole Station in Antarctica, where people started telling me, you know, I'd share stories and they say, you need to write a book. And I started thinking to myself, why are they saying this? And then I started to be a bit introspective, and it started to dawn on me that I had walked a way more peculiar path than I had considered up until that point. Mm-hmm. And I started to really, I guess you would say, reframe my memories to look back at things a little bit differently. I think of like a photograph on the wall, and you might have it matted and framed to look beautiful. But if you take away the matting and the frame, you see more of the image. Mm-hmm. So I started looking backwards in my recollections and reframing those images with what I know now.
So I've spent a lot of time around mobsters and gangsters, interviewing them, having them on the podcast. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when you ask a mobster when they were active, hey, what do you do for a living? I own a construction business. I own a plumbing business. I own dry cleaners. I own this. When you tell me you're a plumber, you give me red flags, because to me, you take me to, it's a little bit blurry, your background on what you've done, just fine. Maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not. It could go the CIA route. It could be the DIA route. It could be a lot of different intelligences. It's not hard to be associated with them. But you're saying you've never been involved with CIA. You've not done anything with DIA. That's not something you've done in the past before.
I have never been directly employed by any of those companies, alphabet agencies, however you want to title them. But having looked backwards, I question the proximity that I was to them. I may have been some sort of unknown asset, is my suspicion. The type of clients that I had are not the type of people that when they get a leak under their sink, they go to the yellow pages and check for the local plumber. So I believe that I was on some sort of an approved list by whom I don't know, but I can tell you that certainly I was involved in peculiar activities 24 hours a day. There were certain clients that could call me 24 hours a day, request which vehicle I showed up in, either my labeled plumbing company van or up to and including an extremely fast street racing Camaro, let's just put it that way. And these clients would dictate when I met them what vehicle I showed up with, which mansion we were going to.
Are these names we would recognize?
John Tunney was one of them, owner of the Carlyle Group.
John Tunney, owner of the Carlyle Group, partners with a billionaire that we've had on the podcast before, David Rubenstein. Okay, interesting.
You're familiar with the Carlyle Group?
Of course I am, yes.
I did a lot of peculiar work for the Carlyle Group and their facilities and their personnel.
So unpack peculiar work. What does that mean?
I would say that I was set up as some sort of getaway driver. That if things went wrong, I was known to be good at that.
Getaway from what? Getaway driver from what?
Whatever he was doing in that mansion.
Did you ever see anything weird where you're like, this is kind of weird what they're working on?
I think I saw that all the time. I think so many of the things now in retrospect were extremely peculiar, but it's because of the collected experiences that I have now that I can look back and make that assessment. At the time that things happened, firsthand experience, they seemed a lot more benign. And maybe I was naive, maybe I was young, maybe that's what was being taken advantage of. But looking backwards, a lot of the facilities that I worked in, a lot of the folks' homes that I was present in, things got weird all the time. It was not rare that I would be, working at a bar sink in a billionaire's common space. And next thing I know, I would get asked by he and his friends, to sit down and engage in whatever conversation they had been involved with. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But in hindsight, that's really weird. It's not often that a bunch of billionaires ask the plumber to sit down and dialogue with them.
What's wrong with that? Maybe they just want to be personal. Maybe they want to have a conversation with you.
Nothing wrong with it at all. You're right. No prejudices, but just in the grand scheme of every other day in that role, it wasn't as common as you would think. It was an out of the ordinary experience. For the most part, in those environments, I was observably invisible.
Got it. Like I would think about it, we have somebody in my office who comes, he's doing the lights, he's doing the AC, he's doing working out stuff. He's there, I'll be on conference calls. He can hear what I'm talking about, what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So it could be as simple as that kind of a relationship they had with you, but they trusted you.
Fair enough, but it would be different if you were then to engage that tradesman, bring them into your conversation, and start asking their opinion on things.
Okay. Getaway driver, getaway from what? If you said the Camaro or the company car, right? The company truck.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of unpacked it a little bit, but if you don't mind going a little bit deeper, when I hear getaway, I think about getaway that we're running away from doing something, illegal underground that I don't want people to know about, and I need to trust somebody that can get us to a different destination so we won't get caught. Am I reading it correctly?
Absolutely.
So what do we get? Who are we getting away from?
I guess, again, whoever the mansion was that we arrived at, basically I would get a call 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Mr. Tunney could contact me. I would ask him which vehicle he wanted me to pick him up in. And then when I would pick him up, he would then give me an address to go to. I would wait outside. He would do whatever his business was in the interior. I wish I could tell you. I know there were a couple of times that I did enter with him, but I can't recall them that well, to be honest.
Okay.
And that was a rarity. He almost never asked me to enter. It was always wait outside.
Okay. So let's talk about remote viewing. Okay. To the average person, I mean, we see it remote viewing. It's kind of weird. It's tough to explain. It's technical, right? What remote viewing is. But if you don't mind, to the average audience, what is remote viewing?
Remote viewing, people just need to understand, is a skill set, first and foremost, that everybody possesses. Similar to the ability to play a guitar. There's nothing keeping you from playing a guitar other than your own desire and level of practice to, prove proficiency. Anybody can do remote viewing. Nothing's stopping anyone from doing it other than a massive amount of folks saying that, it can't be done. But the facts of the matter, remote viewing, to put in its simplest definition, is one's ability to get the right answer without any scientific basis on how they got it. It's outside of what our understanding of abilities are, but it works. It's been proven time and time again that it is very effective. It's very accurate, and it's very learnable.
Is it used by illusionists?
It's used by all sorts of folks. It could be used by illusionists for sure. There is some semblance of a two-way street to working on this energy level. So part of what I'm discussing today and the ability to put thoughts in people's head contemporarily by an abuse of technology was in antiquity an abuse of technique. So adepts of old would have the ability to enter this space and have a thought go into your head. Now, there's technologies that do that, and we can put this in the spectrum of, let's say the energies that remote viewers work in.
Okay, so brainwashing is not a new thing.
Not at all.
Brainwashing has been around for a while. So if you look at the process of brainwashing, you'll hear somebody talk about isolation, monopolization, debilitation, exhaustion, drugs, torture, enforcement of routine, hypnosis, repetition, gaslighting. If I keep repeating it to you, affirmations, there's a lot of effectiveness in repetitive, getting somebody to think positive or negative or weak, or you can't do this, or you need the government. Many ways you can do this. It's been going on for a long time, whether it's Operation Mockingbird you're talking about, other things. But for you, when remote viewer, you get hired as a plumber to go to Raytheon, then they upgrade you to firefighter. You have access to pretty much everything while you're there in Antarctica. For the average person that, when you think about Antarctica, this is kind of where I go to. Fun facts and strange facts about Antarctica, okay? It's a desert, driest continent on the planet. Very few people live there, 140 permanent residents. It was discovered recently in 1820 by Russian expedition. No country owns it. It wasn't named until 1890s. Mostly ice, 90%. Holds most of the world's fresh water, 60 to 90%. It used to be as warm as Melbourne years ago, 40, 50 million years ago. 63 degrees Fahrenheit. Right now it's 128 degrees, minus 120 degrees Fahrenheit, give or take. No time zone. The only way you can go is north. Has active volcanoes, subglacial lake that flows blood red, diamond dust floats. Even back in the days, Hitler was fascinated by Antarctica, where he had a passion for the occult, and when he was searching for something in Antarctica, the Nazi Germany's built a station in Antarctica, however, was abandoned some 70-something years ago. So they offer you a job to go to Antarctica. One, how did they find you? What were they asking you to do? What was your job description, and what did you find when you went there?
I found them because the
You
economy.
found them.
I found
Okay.
them. The economy had tanked so poorly that my business was not doing well, and I was reaching out to find out what was going on.
You're living in New York at the
I
time.
was living on Long Island at
Okay,
the time.
got it.
Correct. They were literally the only person on the planet that would cut me a check at that point.
Why is that?
Just the economy.
Okay,
I
got it.
was putting out applications and getting no response.
This is post 2008, 2009. Market
Yes,
tanks
sir.
38%.
Yes, sir.
Tough times. Economy's bad. Got it.
Correct. I had 2 children to feed and was going to take any contract from anyone that was going to cut me a check. I absolutely did not want to go to the South Pole Station. I did not want to spend a winter there. I did not believe you could have functioning plumbing. As a plumbing and heating specialist, I thought this was all like a joke. I couldn't believe what was going on, but I was going to go take the check. I had no fondness for Raytheon. I did a short stint after high school in the United States Submarine Service. I learned what Raytheon is really about, which is killing people. They love making weapons. I mean, that's their bread and butter. So I was pensive about being employed directly by them, and I went regardless. I kept my eyes and ears open. I was like a sponge the entire time that I was there. I knew that they had to be lying about something if Raytheon was involved. And lo and behold, after quite a few years, I figured out, what was really going on.
So while you're taking the job, you're skeptical about them, but
Mhm.
because you need the income, you're willing to take the job because I got to take care of my family, my 2 kids. That's kind of what your mindset is.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now you go there. What do you see? What was it like? Where were you living? What was your days looking like? Sleep pattern, work, climate? How did you adjust to it? Was family back in town? Kind of give us a little bit of that.
When I first showed up to Antarctica, it was the summer season, and we were staying in what are called Jamesways, which are these Korean War era tents that I was assured that the one that I was sleeping in had probably gotten more shelled than any other tent through the whole entire Korean War debacle. It was very cold. When I landed, I think it was minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And the environment, I would say, right off the bat, was obviously probably one of the most compartmentalized facilities that I had ever shown up to. And I knew it was going to be a trip trying to figure out what was really going on. The science folk there, which I've seen this in other facilities as well, they are very egocentric. It's very easy to rub the back of a scientist, say you're doing a great job, you're going to save the world, everything here is to support what you're doing. But I started noticing that every scientist was saying the same story to me. Every time I would take the key, open the door, walk into a compartment, discuss with them what they were doing in there, I kept hearing, this is the most important work at the facility. Everybody here is to support what I'm doing. I said, oh, okay. I hear you loud and clear. And then I go to the next room and I'd hear the same thing. And I started to paint this picture in my own head that everybody here is bamboozled. Nobody here has a clue what's actually going on, but they sure believe that they're the most important thing here.
So what was actually going on? What do you think was actually going on?
Directed energy weapons platforms operating under the false pretenses of science. That's what's actually going on at the South Pole Station. There are technologies and weapons-grade technologies on this planet that the average citizen cannot even begin to wrap their brains around. And that's why I'm speaking out. That's my motivation, is that we, the people of this planet, are obligated to leave it better than we found it for our children. And if we have no idea the disaster that we were handed, we're not in a position to rectify the problem. So I'm trying to bring everybody's information up to reality to, I guess, match the understanding of the foe of the people. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world right now that's not actually to the best interest of the average mortgage payer.
There's no question about that. It's a very weird economy today, but I want you to go again deeper. Okay, so these technologies they're working on, what they're doing, is it just purely they're making advancement and progress? Like they're just innovation, we're just advancing, doing more things? Or is it, a dark side to it where they want to control us? Because, it's very easy to jump to conclusion, kind of say, man, they're trying to control us, they're trying to do this, they're trying to, okay, great. I think there's a sect that wants to do that. But maybe they're trying to just find a way to advance. You're thinking their motives are negative. Why do you think that?
A, because they're secret.
Okay.
It's not transparent.
Because they're secret.
Yes,
Okay.
their motives, their actions are secret. So to me, that speaks volumes right off the bat. If transparency was involved, I'd be a lot less concerned. But when things like the Christchurch earthquakes occur, and that is secreted away, that was the South Pole Station. That was the start of the ice cube neutrino detector. The season that I was there, it went from construction to operations and maintenance. And when they first operated it, they caused 2 accidental earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand. So this is weapons grade stuff. Since that time, we've had leaders, American leaders themselves, multiple times threaten other nation states with earthquakes if they didn't get in line. Those nations didn't get in line, and then they received earthquakes. So this is stuff that's happening in real time right around us for people that are paying attention.
Nations that didn't get in line, they got earthquakes.
Turkey was one of them.
The big Turkey earthquake.
Joe Biden made a direct threat to them about sending them an earthquake. And then they got an earthquake when they didn't listen.
Joe Biden said you're going to get an earthquake.
Correct. Just recently with this whole Israel-Hamas debacle, I apologize, I don't watch the mass media that often, but somebody had sent me a link where I believe it was some leaders in Iran that stated that if they invaded Gaza in full force and stuff, that they would deliver a huge earthquake.
Iran would deliver a huge earthquake.
If my memory serves me correctly.
Can you look this up, Rob, to see about... So Joe Biden in a speech says you're going to get an earthquake, or...
To Turkey. And this is kind of what I'm getting at, is that we're not the only faction with this technology. Nation states are puppets for powers that are greater than that.
Is it at this point public where everybody knows that the weapon to create earthquakes is available to everybody, or no, it's still private?
It's still relatively private. To the best of my knowledge, I'm the only one discussing this.
When did Biden say he's going to give Turkey an earthquake?
I guess it would have been a couple of weeks before they got it.
And he said that in a speech, like public video camera out there where you can see it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd love to see that, Rob, if you can find this. Okay, so then Iran threatens for an earthquake, and you're saying as recent as like the last 2 weeks.
Yes, this was within a couple of weeks.
Okay,
Just sent this to me.
So for me, a part of that, I wonder if that's real, because some events have happened before a massive, election cycle or something takes place. That was the timing of that was very weird, right? Like even the Sandy, the hurricane that hit, where Chris Christie and Barack Obama, this was October to November 2nd of 2012. Election was the 6th. And that brought the country together because they saw Chris Christie and Obama, and then boom, election is done with, he wins second term. So you're saying that these types of things can happen. Countries have access to do that as a method of a weapon. Now, what do you need to create an earthquake? How technical of a process is it?
Not that technical at all, from my understanding. The folks that I've spoken to, both inside and outside of the program, in specifics to the ice cube neutrino detector, the statement was made that because there's 5,160 of what are called DOMs, these digital optical modules embedded in the ice. Think of them simply as microtransmitters, but now working together. So it's a phased array transmitter. And they clarified that at the fault line, where earthquakes, where the faults are always in displeasure of each other almost, it doesn't take much added energy to push them over the edge. They're constantly always looking to make an earthquake at certain points on the planet. So certain points, it's actually really easy to initiate an earthquake if you have a delivery mechanism.
That's the ice cube neutrino?
Yes, the ice cube neutrino detector transmits.
Can I play this clip for you to
Absolutely.
get reaction to see if this is what you're talking about?
That's a DOM right there.
Can you yeah, go ahead.
I've just hiked out to the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory. Let's head inside. This is the biggest scientific project going on here at the South Pole, and it's basically built so we can detect high energy particles, neutrinos, that originate from outside our solar system.
This right here is what one of the optical detectors looks like. There are over 5,000 of these buried over a mile deep in the ice right below us.
So right now, I'm right outside the server room in Ice Cube Laboratory. I've got to wear an electrostatic discharge jacket to make sure I don't shock any of the components in there. So all this data comes up through these cables, through the towers on each side of Ice Cube, comes through here, gets fed into the servers.
So this is the server room.
Did you
for
see
the
all those
Ice Cube
servers?
laboratory.
Yes.
All the data coming up from
Does
those
anybody
servers.
ask how much processing capacity that is?
How much is it?
I have no idea. It seems to be unmeasurable by most people that look at that. That was one row of servers. There's many rows of them in there. The
So-
fact that the ability to keep that place cool requires them to open a louver to the exterior temperature at the South Pole in the wintertime. That was part of my job, was to walk out to that building every day to make sure that the louvers would open so they could let the cold in from outside to keep those servers from overheating.
Because of how hot it is in there.
Now, I'm not a mathematician when it comes to these levels of BTU input,
Mhm.
but someone can do the calculation. If it takes minus 80 degree temperatures to come into your space to offset for your temperature build, there's a lot of processing going on, a lot of computing. I'm learning a lot about quantum computing and the need to chill.
And this is not even your specialty. This
This is
not
not
your
even my
work.
specialty,
Okay.
but this is observational.
So 5,000 of these. How much does one of those equipment pieces cost? Do you know?
I don't know that number, but I do know that the overall cost for the entire Ice Cube neutrino detector project was an absurd number from a tradesman point of view. It was something to the tune of like $500 billion.
$500 billion.
It was an absurd number, was my recollection. It was an absurd number.
And who invested into that? The U.S. government?
I would assume the National Science Foundation cut the check. I know that they work with the University of Wisconsin. What I also know is that they are making moves to take that facility and make it 10 times the size of what it is currently.
Make it 10 times what it is currently. What?
In the ice.
Right.
Currently, it's the largest telescope on the planet. They're about to make it 10 times bigger. Let's presume it's 10 times the cost. Are we going to get 10 times the return on investment? What is the return on investment on something like this? Because from its primary position, it doesn't seem like it's worth the science at the cost that they're providing it. But if you were to say, no, it can deliver earthquakes on all of our enemies, no, it can input thoughts into all of the people on the planet, well, that's some value-added investment at that point.
So out of all the places in the world, how many places have that?
None.
Is that the only place?
That is the only facility like
why,
it in the
why
world.
is it only there? Why is it that Antarctica is the best place for? Like, for example, if somebody says, why is it that Napa Valley is one of the best places to create wine? Well, because the biggest plus minus of temperature, it goes very high and it's got a big drop off. Where most people, the drop is like this. Okay, that math, I get it. Why is Antarctica the ideal place to build that?
I believe that's a multifaceted answer, because there's for the presented reasons and then the secondary and tertiary reasons. So primary reason being a neutrino detector. The benefit is that the DOMs are embedded in the ice, which is basically crystal clear. So they get an unobstructed view of the neutrino activity when the neutrino impacts the nucleus of a water molecule, which is the ice there. You get a reaction. One is a blue flash, known as Cherenkov radiation, and then the nucleus and the neutrino are destroyed, and you have a muon ejected as the remaining particle. The blue flash, being in the ice, is why the location matters, because it's the only place you can get that much ice with that much clarity. The other consideration is that this technology, in the search for neutrinos, I'm learning from speaking with other folks that exotic propulsion engines, whether you want to call them UFOs, UAPs, off-planet, on-planet, ours, theirs, whomever, seem to eject neutrinos also. So the southern pole of this planet, and what we've learned from other off-world activities, be it lunar or other celestial bodies, there's something to be said for the ease of entering and exiting the magnetosphere of any celestial body from the southern pole. So it's my belief that the location has also to do with it being utilized as like an air traffic control center for these more exotic propelled vehicles.
What is the conditions there, since the Antarctica is not owned by a single country, right? and anybody can be there. What are some interested countries that have presence right now in Antarctica, especially when you were there in 2010, 2011?
Obviously, all of the signers of the Antarctic Treaty seem to be in cahoots somehow. I think that it's kind of a pay-to-play situation, that if you want to get into the treaty, then that'll get you involved. But I think that we're going to start to see things transition, because the Antarctic Treaty is about to expire. And I think this is going to be a very interesting time, because when you say that, people don't own it, it's true. But people are also not following the treaty insofar as inspecting other people's facilities. So it's kind of like a don't ask, don't tell situation. Everybody seems to be up to no good, but nobody wants to discuss it. I worked with a gentleman up on the North Slope of Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
He was a cook, and he had told me that he was also at one point hired by Raytheon Polar Services to go on what's called a CAT train, which is short for Caterpillar vehicles, track vehicles. They pull all their gear with them and meander about the continent under the pretense of science. He told me they had him sign an NDA. He told me he didn't give a damn what are they going to do to him. And he told me how what they were actually doing was looking to place missile silos. They were surveying to place missile silos, which are completely against the Antarctic Treaty. The whole continent's just a weaponized facility for every nation, but nobody's adhering to the treaty. Every nation agrees, well, you can come check our facility if you want. We can come check your facility if you want.
Yeah.
But nobody is doing that.
You know what this makes me think about? So let's just say you're getting a hair transplant, okay? And Turkey is apparently the #1 place for hair transplant. The reason why I know this is because one of our clients came that we're consulting for. They run a big surgeon at a University of Munich, what they're doing. And some of the clients they're tied to is hair transplant. Turkey's a place to be. Great. So imagine you travel to Turkey and you're there for a week to get the transplant in place. And then there's 20 other people in there. Let's just say it's an expensive place. And you're like, oh shit, you were in that movie. Damn, this guy's also getting a transplant. Oh shit, you're the retired basketball player. Oh, what are you doing here, right? All these people are there. Everyone knows you're there for what? Transplant. You go see a therapist. You're at the #1 therapist. He's $1,000 an hour. She's $1,000 an hour. It's for billionaires. You're sitting in the room like, damn, there's 2 other guys in this room here. I know these guys from Fortune. He's a CEO of that company. He's a CEO of that company. You're seeing what the other guy's doing. Word's going to leak, what the motive is of being there. So if these guys are all in Antarctica and they're building technology for earthquakes that everyone has access to, isn't that kind of like a weird understanding to say, so you got the technology to give me an earthquake, I got the technology to give you an earthquake. It's kind of a weird dynamic, isn't it?
But this is the dynamic that we need to start bringing the average mortgage payer into consideration thereof. It's very peculiar that there are certain factions that take turns with the trigger to such a device.
Yeah, I have a hard time with this because I just Googled right now Biden. Rob, did you find anything with Biden giving a speech on Turkey? I don't find anything either.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't find anything either because for me, so you know what it makes me think about? We've had a lot of people on the podcast that'll reach out and it'll be stories about, I used to do this. What a freaking story. We'd love to break it with you. Anyway, everybody wants to break a story, right? Everybody wants to break a story and they'll come and they'll give the story and da-da-da-da-da. And we're like, what a fascinating story. And then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I don't know if this guy is really is telling the truth or if he's just bullshitting his way out there and telling a story. Rogan, for example, we're talking about earlier, right? Hey, this guy's a plumber and he's talking about there's a, what do you call it? Whistleblower and you know everything that's going on in Antarctica. This guy's a bullshitter. This guy's full of it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. The split between audiences that, I ask about, I have friends that are CIA, FBI. We have friends from all over the place. We've talked to a lot of different people. Say, well, sometimes cases like this is this. I think this guy's this. One guy's looking you up a little bit more. Maybe this is this. Maybe that's that. It's very easy to be skeptical about what you're saying because when you make a claim saying Joe Biden said he's going to have that earthquake and there's zero documentation online that says that, don't you kind of lose credibility when you say that?
No, not at all. It just means someone didn't find the link yet. And I could also be wrong in that capacity. But
Yeah,
it
but
doesn't change the things that I can document.
But that's a pretty big accusation to make that immediately causes you to lose credibility to zero.
Not in the slightest.
You don't think so?
No, not at all, sir.
So here's what I'd love to do. I would love, before I go live, I give you the opportunity. We're going to go live with this interview, but I want to give you the opportunity, since you're going to be able to find the link that Joe Biden said.
I may not be able to find the link at this point.
But then how do you make that kind of a claim to say Joe?
That's not what I'm basing my experience on. That's a detail.
Brother, that's a big detail.
You know, it's a bigger detail.
What's that?
That I have documentation from the IceCube neutrino detector that states that it transmits. That's factual. That's right on my website in the archive section, the document that comes right out of the manufacturer's specifications.
That says what?
That says that each of the DOMs can transmit at up to 2,047 volts each. That's referenceable and real right now.
Okay, so what does that mean to the average person? What does that mean?
That they're lying, that it doesn't just receive, that it also transmits.
Okay. And which means what? Which means
that we're in trouble, that they're lying, first and foremost.
Okay.
And that people need to inquire as to what is it transmitting. I'm suggesting the stuff that I've looked into, but apparently a simple faux pas on the unavailable link brings everything into question.
Okay, can we pull that up on the website? If you tell Rob where it's at, I'd love to pull
Absolutely.
it up.
My website's deciphering.tv. In the archives section of that website, you'll see what's referred to as DOM document. And that comes straight out of the manufacturer's specifications from the University of Wisconsin that built the device.
So it's public information.
It's public information.
Why is that a big deal if it's public information?
Because it actually means that it's been there the entire time and no one looked.
Okay, so if it's been there, what's our threat if they've known that? It's the fact that they have access to, they've had access to creating earthquakes for a long time, except we've not known about it?
They might have had it before this device by some other means, but I can only attest to what I've discovered and what I've learned from the crew that I worked with.
Okay, so let's set that aside. Okay, the fact that they have, they're working on technology to be able to transmit or be able to create earthquakes in different parts, and what happened in New Zealand to those two churches where the earthquakes happen, or you're claiming the earthquakes that happen in Turkey, or even the earthquake that you're saying Iran said, they could cause. You're saying that's also public information with Iran saying they're going to create Turkey.
I did actually witness that news event with the Iranian threat. And I apologize. I believe it was the Iranian officials that said it, but I could be wrong. But I witnessed somebody saying it just the other day.
Rob, can you look that up to see if Iranian officials said earthquake about, what happened? Okay, so what other experiences did you have while you were there or post? Did you, your 1 year with Raytheon, when you did that, did you continue working with them afterwards? And if not, what did you do afterwards?
I did not continue working with them afterwards. Another item of intrigue while I was present at the South Pole Station was when I discovered that the ELF system, which is another directed energy weapons platform, was not de-energized and defunct. It was energized and functional. So these are two weapons-grade electronic systems that I discovered were operational at the South Pole Station, regardless of whatever links can be found today. So
ELF.
ELF, extra low frequency.
Okay.
Used to communicate with submarines, and it itself is questionable in its other multifaceted things that people claim that type systems can do.
Okay, so let's give you credit. When it comes down to earthquake for Iran, October 10th, Iran's foreign minister warns Israel from Beirut it could suffer a huge earthquake. Iran's foreign minister has called on Israel to stop attacks on Gaza, warning that the war might expand on other parts of the Middle East if Hezbollah joins the battle. Can you type in if Iran has technology to cause earthquakes? Because now that is a very interesting story to see if they can do something like that. How long have we had the technology to cause earthquakes?
I wish I knew the answer to that, but what it appears is that by the time the civilian population becomes aware of an existing technology, the military-industrial complex has typically been using it for no less than 40 years.
military-industrial complex has been using it for no less than 40 years.
That seems to be a standard.
Raytheon, Boeing, you're talking about all the other guys, General Dynamics, they've been using it for less than 40 years, at least 40 years.
It seems to be the case.
Okay, so how much deeper have you gone on this? Or are you somebody that's just coming out and saying, here's what's going on, rest of the world, go search it? Or no, here's what's going on, I talked about it, here's what I know about it, this is who's behind it, this is how they're doing it, these are the events that took place. What other information do you have that would be good for the rest of the world to know?
To answer your question, I think I'm in both positions. I'm challenging people to do the same research that I'm doing, because the more I look into it, the more I'm finding. What I'm suggesting people do now, rapidly, is start paying attention to the people in proximity around you, start learning what the symptoms are of individuals being negatively impacted by directed energy weapons systems, because this is all referenceable. It doesn't take me to let you know that your family's friends and neighbors are being negatively impacted. You can check out for yourself.
Okay, that's good. Well, we will do that. But since you're here and this is kind of like what you've been a part of, what else do you know that we would benefit from knowing?
Know thyself. One of the biggest things with this technology is what I call invasive thoughts. So what we're about to see commercially, you're in the business savvy world, the general population is about to get sent out for sale what is called bone conducting technology, right? Headphones that go in your ear but don't radiate the sound through the atmosphere. Instead, they direct them immediately to your inner ear, and they cause a reaction with the bones in there, which is effectively transporting a voice into your head. This is the technology that I'm talking about. What they're going to confuse people on is to make them think that this transducer, this technology, needs to be on your head for it to work. Well, the reality is that we've shown that these transducers and these technologies that are patented and existing for decades can accomplish the same bone conducting transmission at much greater distance, which is the definition of putting a voice in someone's head. The military called this voice-to-skull technology, and it's been being utilized by them since the 1960s.
Yeah, and Daily Mail did an article on this. Rob, if you can pull this up, see if you're talking about the same thing. Companies will be able to take over your dreams with commercials. I think McDonald's is doing this. You talked about that with Sean Ryan. So pumping commercials into your mind while you're sleeping, is that kind of what you're talking about?
Absolutely, yes. It's in the same ballpark for sure. Whether it's a commercial as a voice, so to say, or me as a voice. But either way, the technology is the same. It's to remotely input information into someone's head.
I mean, for me, okay, let's just say that is going to be out there, or it's out there already. Companies for profit, I almost don't mind it if you want to just do it for profit. Let's just say McDonald's wants me to buy a Big Mac. Last time I had a Big Mac was September of 1999 when I got out of the Army. I threw up. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And I used to love Big Macs. Fine, if they're going to do it for profit. They're already doing it anyways. Hey, Happy, the brand this. Hey, this, the brand this. I need to own an iPhone. We're already spending a bunch of money with different programming that we've been going through, right? What I'm concerned about is programming coming from a government or an organization that wants to control us and that wants the populace to buy into ideas that make zero sense. What's been happening the last 3 years?
Like the whole planet all decided to wear masks at once?
Yeah, yesterday
I wonder if that could have been applied through technology that I'm discussing.
So did it though?
I would say yes. I would say I observed it.
Yeah.
That the technology that I'm laying at everybody's feet, I would say that supports what I'm saying. I don't think that the whole planet woke up one day and shared the same thought on a mask, because they don't wake up on any day and share a thought on anything.
How do they do it?
Through the application, what you just said earlier, through repetition, through exhaustion, through finances, putting people, they have this all dialed in.
This has been going on for years, so I'm not...
Oh, understood.
Yeah, this has been going on for...
But this is just an added layer.
Okay. But the part I'm curious about, is there anything that they're using that's a technology form outside of just constant repetitive commercials, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, hey, mask, 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 mask. I'm like, I got to wear mask, COVID, 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 COVID. You're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. Death chart. Man, people are dying left and right.
Yeah.
Cases. and then everybody starts panicking and we panic, they can be controlled. That's nothing new.
Understood.
That's nothing new. I lived in Iran 10 years. I saw, we had 2 channels. I saw Mark Bad America, Mark Bad America, Mark Bad America, death upon America, death upon America. You hated America, right? It's a terrible country. You're seeing videos right now on what they're brainwashing. Every country brainwashes their populace. They have to do it. This country is this, Russia's the best, or Iran's the best, or US is the best, whatever it is. That's a method that's happening. You working at Raytheon, the 1 year, okay, Antarctica, you picked up what you picked up. Outside of the things that we've talked about so far, anything else that maybe you came across that seemed a little bit fishy, minus what we've talked about so far with mind control and earthquakes?
The air traffic control stuff I think is important to consider. And I think to double down on the mind control, because when you're saying that brainwashing has been around for a while, well, that's a very fair statement. But to gloss over the idea of having that voice put personally into your head, I don't think you're really understanding the weight of that dilemma. It would be like if that repetition, now if I could take an idea and have it repeat in your head in your voice, it's one of the most powerful things out there that people have not really truly considered. If I wanted to manipulate you, right, on any given day, when a fork in the road presents itself to you, you can sit there and you go, Pat, should I do this? Pat, should I do that? And it's almost like a conference call happens in your head amongst yourselves. Do I go left? Do I go right?
But somebody else can listen in to that conversation.
And have input. Now, what if I could, in your voice, say, Pat, you better make a right. You know it's the right thing.
You think that technology exists?
I know that technology exists. This is what I'm trying to impart upon you.
The technology for me to be in the middle of a big decision that I got to make. So my name is Putin. I'm in the middle of a decision to say I'm sick and tired of NATO coming closer to the east. They keep talking, they don't want to do anything. In July, June of this year, NATO said, hey, let's accelerate the process of getting Ukraine to be part of NATO. Once you do that, if I attack them, Article 5, NATO needs to attack Russia. It's a job responsibility that they have. I know what they're doing. Should I press the button or not? These people that have access to the power could put the thought in Putin said to say, press the button right now.
All day
Your
long.
legacy's on it. Gorbachev wants it.
All day long, people have this power. Many factions have this technology. Doesn't mean he's going to listen. Just like when we have brainwashing on television, it's repetition, it's an effort. Doesn't mean they're going to do it. It's not direct muscle control, but this is why I call it an invasive thought. It's pretty powerful once you consider it.
Yeah, I'm trying to see outside of the typical weight that we know, would you need tools for me to be carrying for you to be able to do that? Or I don't need to have anything on me for you to do that? For example, let me explain what I'm asking. Okay, I have a phone. This thing's got a camera on it. This thing's got a mic on it. Is there a possibility that Apple is listening to our conversation right now? Sure, of course. There's a possibility. Is there a possibility that when I go to the bathroom, or if I go take this thing in the shower and I put it like this camera, maybe somebody caught me on camera while I'm getting to the shower? Sure, there's a possibility. Okay, fine. Is there a possibility that that could be reported to the CIA, to the DIA, to a secret intelligence agency that maybe Apple has a contract that we're not aware of? Sure. Could there be a possibility that when these things were designed in China, and China put a technology in there that's so small, that's so minute, that even Apple people cannot see to inspect the product that they're producing, that China now is getting all the intel from us because China is we sell more iPhones to China than any other country in the world. I think iPhone has 24% of market share in China. US is 56%, but they have it in China. So if they make it in China, maybe China put something in here for us to listen to that. Okay, great. Tracking. Can somebody tell if I'm on the 405 freeway in LA next week at 4 o'clock in the afternoon if I have my iPhone with me? Sure. All of that stuff, as weird as it sounds, it's believable. But say I don't have anything on me, not my phone, not my watch, not a ring, not anything that somebody can tie to it, nothing, okay? How can somebody put a thought in my head without me having something on me? How do you do that?
You are a series of your own thoughts and electrical impulses.
Okay.
So you are a frequency. You can be scanned, you can be observed, and you can be tracked by that in and of itself by greater technologies than a simple cell phone. So similar to before, like I was discussing with the bone conducting technology, that they can transmit from great distance to place a frequency into you, they can just as easily track from great distance very specific frequencies. The one known as Patrick Bet David. You're the only thing putting that frequency out.
So I'm helping you be able to think what I'm thinking and what decisions I'm about to make?
That could be looked at it that way as well, through setting an AI on you for observation. They can learn you, and then that way the manipulations in your voice can be extremely personalized.
You're not talking about deep fakes. You're not talking about voices, because right now there's technology that we looked at a couple of weeks ago that my own voice speaking in Russian, my own voice speaking in Farsi, that's already available. That's not.
That's what I'm saying. But yes, so you're supporting what I'm saying when you discuss that these technologies are around.
There's a big difference between that and me being able to be a 22-year-old guy who's in love with a girl, who's a girl everybody wants to be with, and you know the whole, what do you call it, Americans, the Cupid, is that what it's called? The Cupid hits and then boom, she falls in love with you. Okay, for me to sit there and have the access to this technology and say, the guy in the red shirt to the right, sitting at the bar, is the guy you have to marry, and he's the love of your life, and God put him in your life. That's your guy. You're going to have 4 kids with that guy, and one of them is going to be a president. Go approach him. Everything you do is to be with this man. You mean to tell me I can put a thought, technology's out there for me to get a girl to be thinking about something like that?
You can apply the thought, but you can't guarantee the outcome.
That she'll flip and decide to come to me and talk to me?
Right. But imagine if you could keep repeating this information, just like any other any other technique or technology.
But this is not a technology. This is what you're talking about. Remote viewing is what you're talking about.
These are 2 different things. Remote viewing is a technique.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with the technology I'm discussing.
What do you need to build this technology? What do you need to build this technology? What components do you need to combine to build this technology? For example, we're talking about microchips the other day, semiconductor chips, okay? And why so many people are fascinated by Ukraine. Well, you know, there's different levels to microchips, semiconductor chips you make. China is one of the competitors that makes semiconductor chips. There's one problem. They make the chips that are the easiest to make. So it's like they make the shittiest chips that people sell for 2 cents, 3 cents, 4 cents. They don't make the real expensive chips. Okay, so now if you go to the countries that make the most expensive chips, I want to say Netherlands or one of those places that makes the most expensive chips, and there's just one piece that you need, neon. And what country produces a lot of neon? It's Ukraine that produces a lot of neon, okay? So I need a little bit of neon, I need a little bit of this, I need a little bit of this to be able to build all the best microchips out there. And to be able to do that, I need access to this. What technology combined together allows me to be able to inject a thought in your mind when you're about to make a decision?
I would imagine it just has to do with, like I said earlier, the bone conducting technology, which is apparently about to become as cheap and accessible as anybody who wants to buy a set of ear pods.
There's no, okay. Okay. So you think the idea right now to read people's thoughts, that technology exists?
Absolutely.
To read people's thoughts.
Absolutely. You're currently right now just having a series of electromagnetic impulses fire in your head. That's absolutely readable and at distance.
And at distance.
Absolutely.
So somebody can think right now what I'm thinking about, good, bad, ugly.
They could read every single thing that's going on in your head.
And they can put a thought in my mind to help me influence a decision I'm about to make.
They could sick a team of AI computers on you to access every thought that you're considering through, just like we can consider all these social platforms. People are constantly putting their information in there. So it starts to paint a picture of who you are and where your head is at.
So is this kind of you going to the Havana Syndrome side? Is that
Absolutely.
Okay. So the Havana Syndrome was what, when, you know, military government personnel that are close to, they kept having these headaches. They felt like somebody was doing something to them.
A whole litany of things.
Yeah.
One of the things that they glaze over, the Department of Defense put out information to their personnel because this is their responsibility to them. they discuss on the list of Havana syndrome symptoms that these people are reporting weird noises. Well, that's a really cool way of saying
cricket noises.
voices. They're not being as direct and transparent as they should be. But what these people are reporting is that they're hearing voices. That's the weird sounds. It's very legit. It's very real. The technology's there. We're about to get it from Sony, Panasonic, and then people are going to mount it in their ears. But this is the technology. It's real.
The technology is going to become mainstream where you can impose your thoughts on me without even talking to each other. You can.
They're not going to tell you that part, but they're going to give you voice-to-skull technology under the veil of something else. Just like we get all kinds of technology under the veil of something. You called this a phone earlier. I'd call it a weapon. It's weaponized technology that was rolled out under false pretenses. One of the things that the phones can do now is pay attention to your biorhythms, your breath rate, your pulse rate, under the false pretenses of it being something benign and good for you. But what if I told you that every single time you looked at your phone and every single post that it can get an eye movement off of it, knows exactly what you're looking at, and now it also knows your reaction to it.
That's believable.
Absolutely. And this is handheld technology right now.
Totally get that.
So they know that if something gets you excited, gets you depressed.
Totally get it.
They're already learning. They're already paying attention. Yep. So now through reading that, understanding you, and a desire to manipulate, they're in a very powerful and privileged position.
I told, like, one night, we're at Palm Springs. I'm working on this book. That's a fiction book that's coming out about a secret society. And we spent 6 hours researching nuclear bombs and nuclear weapons for 6 hours. By the end of it, I'm like, if somebody's following what we're searching right now on Google, they're going to be worried that this guy from Iran is up to something. We're just working on a fiction book. You understand what I'm saying? I'm like, these guys are probably thinking some bad stuff.
Briefcase nuke.
Go identify who this guy's at this country club that's working on this book. What's he doing? But okay, that part, fully believable. I get that part. The part about putting thoughts and entering my mind and saying, what's he thinking about right now? He's about to make a decision. Should he do this? Should he not do? He's about to make that. Should he give it? Should he file bankruptcy? Or should he get a divorce? Or should he do this? All these thoughts that they can get into someone's mind to say, should you do this? And then put that thought. I don't know about that one. That's a very interesting one. I do believe
consider it a weapon that your foe has. Hypothetically,
who's my foe?
Someone who's against your best interest. We'll just keep it in vague terms.
Consider it as in be paranoid that they may have a weapon like that, or it's a factual, they have it, whether you like it or not. Those are two different things.
I don't see the reason to add the term paranoia in this hypothetical. It would be, how about just lack of naivete?
On my end.
Absolutely.
So, but there's a difference between, like, for example, why do atheists have a hard time believing in God? Because some of them are wired to say, I have to see it to believe it. You believe in God? You believe in Jesus? Show it to me. I want to go have sushi with Jesus. Okay? It's like, no, this is part of faith. You have to believe in something you have not yet seen. But you're saying faith is not required for this. This exists, is what you're saying.
All of the supporting components for this technology are already patented, already existed, and for the most part, the higher end aspects are also patented and exist. It's just a matter of me stating that the South Pole Station is operating under false pretenses here. That is the harder thing to prove. The technologies are referenceable.
Who owns it? Who owns the patent?
I wouldn't know.
But you know there's a patent, though.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know who owns it.
Don't recall reading that line.
Would it be a private? Would it be a government? Is it a private entity like a Raytheon, Northrop Grumman?
If I do remember correctly, there were 3 very important patents that came out from the United States Navy. And the person that they gave credit to, it was a fake name. It was Salvatore Pais. Look that one up. 3 patents from the United States Navy brought to us that we were told by...
Like a pseudonym?
Salvatore Pais. Yeah, if you translate it in Spanish, it just comes out to savior of the country.
If you translate Salvatore Pais, it comes to savior of the country?
Savior of the country. So you ask me who holds the patents. Does it really matter? Is that really the more important question? Or is it more important to understand that they exist? Is it more important to, instead of calling someone paranoid, to actually brood for a moment on the very real possibility that this is what's going on.
Can you go back to Salvatore Pais to see who he is? Just go back to that real quick. So this is what is an American, zoom in a little bit so I can read it. It's an American aerospace engineer and inventor currently working on the United States Space Force. He worked formerly for a Naval Air Station. His patent application for the U.S. Navy attracted attention for the potential energy producing applications, but also doubt about their feasibility and speculation that there may be scams, pseudoscience, or disinformation intended to mislead the United States adversaries.
This is reality.
And you're a plumber?
Absolutely.
It's very hard to believe that.
Why is that? You have prejudices against plumbers?
No, I'd love to see you fix one of our plumbers. We got some issues right now.
I can fix every one of them.
You think so?
I know so.
As a plumber who all of a sudden is interested in things like this, I got to tell you, man, it's very weird.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It's very weird for a plumber to go from that background to all of a sudden having information on things like this. How do you make your money now? Are you still plumbing right now? Is that
I
still
do maintenance work in Alaska.
You do maintenance work in Alaska right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why go from where you were at, Long Island, to Alaska? Is there anything linked to this or not at all? It's just that's where you chose to move to.
Cold weather working skills. Once I was all done at the South Pole Station, the economy had not recovered in New York. I started inquiring to the crew members about me, where can I go with my cold weather skills? They directed me to the North Slope of Alaska.
You ever seen the movie The Usual Suspects?
A long time ago.
Do you know Kaiser Sose?
I remember the statement.
Very interesting guy.
But I don't remember the whole situation.
You give me vibes of three people. Okay. So one is Kaiser Sose, which is kind of like, he's so good at telling all the stories and the fact, and it all lines up where you're kind of like, holy shit, this is kind of going on. The other one is Gianni Russo. I can listen to Gianni Russo for hours. This guy was in the movie Godfather. He used to date some real legit people. But the stories he told me one time, we had a 3-hour meeting in New York at his house. He told me he had lunch with Saddam Hussein, and he had, this with the Shah, and he went and met with Pablo Escobar and is going to kill him. Eventually, Pablo liked him from the movie Godfather, said, stick around, let's have drinks. He told me he hooked up with Marilyn Monroe at 16 years old. I mean, the amount of stories he told me, I said, listen, Johnny, if 10% of the stories you're telling me is true, you've lived a freaking ridiculous life. And then the other one is also like an element of, who you represent, what you're doing, what your background is. Well, a little bit of skepticism of the psyop where you're like, hey, what if you're trying to distract? But that one is very small because you've only done one show and you're not that public. And it's not
I've actually done a lot of shows.
How many shows have you done? Who have you been on?
I've lost count of people that I've interviewed with, actually. A lot of them are on my website. A lot of them are on my
Give me the big names. Who have you been with?
I don't think they were big names.
Sean is a big name.
Sean is a big name. I would say Sean is the biggest guy.
Who's the second biggest guy?
National Press Club. I went to Washington, D.C. As far as public speaking.
Who's the most credible source that wrote about you or talked about you? Most credible source?
Probably Sean Ryan.
How about in mainstream media?
Oh, nobody.
Why not?
Because they're doing everything they can to prevent the truth from getting out to the people.
National Geographic has done stuff about the Havana, syndrome, or...
I'd be happy to speak with them. Anything that I've ever tried to do that was mainstream became edited. I was in season 2, episode 9 of the Alaska Triangle, where the producers of the show, I believe it was Wild Dreams Film Production out of England, I think, sent me to Ketchikan, Alaska. The pretense was that they wanted me to investigate reports of unidentified submerged objects. I went out there with the boat captain, the camera crew, myself. We went out, started looking for stuff, wasn't having any luck. Eventually, had all the luck in the world, found exactly what they sent me out to look for. We recorded everything. Everybody was all cheers and congratulations, mission accomplished. It's funny that they edited all of that out from the show, though. So what I'm learning is that there are folks that want to talk to me that are looking to assist me in my endeavors, and they're few and far between. For the most part, people try to put me on mic to discount what I'm saying, which I find highly interesting because I have no ill motive. I'm not making a nickel off of this. And the only thing I've said is that I'm doing this for we the people of this planet. because we deserve better, and so do our children.
And trust me, that's the part where you gain a lot of credibility with me, because you didn't ask for nothing. And it's not like, we can't talk about this, and that's off topic, and that's this. You've not said nothing. You're
Talk
just
about
like, hey,
anything you want.
no, you said anything. Again, I'm giving you credit, the fact that your approach makes me sit there and say, and then the only thing that you said, Joe Biden said what he said. Maybe Joe Biden said it in his thought and you read his mind. Maybe that's what you did. I think that's probably what
You know why
it
that's
is.
not true?
Why?
Joe Biden has no thoughts. Gotcha.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So what's your biggest, are you optimistic, nervous? Are you, how are you feeling about the future if all these things are happening? Where do you stand?
I don't feel good about it in the slightest. Which
Really?
is why I do what I do. I thought that years ago, when I first dumped this information on the world, I thought that was going to be the end of my obligation. I thought that somebody would take this information, run it up the flagpole for everybody to see. I thought everybody would learn and we would rectify the problem. I was never so wrong in my entire life. The resistance that I have to sharing this information is disgusting. There are a lot of people in the disclosure community that are presenting themselves as operating for the behalf of the people. They're liars. I've met these people face to face. I've gone and spoken at conventions. I've been thrown off the tour, so to say, because I would not take my information and screw with it to support other people's BS. As an example, I went and spoke in Las Vegas a few years ago, publicly, to present this information. It was the first time that I spoke publicly at an event like that. The producer of the event goes by the name of Saeed Farman, an Iranian.
Got to be careful with those guys, but go ahead.
Fair enough. So Saeed brought me into the situation along with his other co-producer, a man who goes by the name of Eric the Healer Datamer.
Mm-hmm.
I attended the event. I disseminated my information. And I was told afterwards by these two people that I now had to figure out a way to take my information and make it support the flat earth psyop, or I'm out. I proceeded to tell them both cleanly and clearly to go fuck themselves, that I would have nothing to do with such bullshit. And then from that point forwards, it became very challenging to garner another event. There are folks like Linda Moulton Howe, who's big in the Antarctica topic. I spoke to her like a pre-interview, basically. She didn't want to hear anything that I had to say because she was very condescending about the fact that I was a plumber. And that because she couldn't understand how that would give me access to information, she was pretty much done with the conversation.
When you were in Antarctica, did you ever go explore? When you're hearing about all this stuff, did you ever go explore and see what's out there, like the red blood, whatever, seat that they have? Or did you go look around? Did you have ample time to go explore yourself?
I pretty much looked at everything that I could. But now appreciate, I was literally at the South Pole Station, 9,300 feet of elevation, 0% humidity, ruthlessly cold, painful temperatures. There's nothing there, not at that location.
No high-end restaurants, no Chipotle, no In-N-Out.
Nothing. I mean, I checked every inch of every ice tunnel that I could have access to. On an occasion, I commandeered a snow machine when I shouldn't have. And a coworker and I drove that machine until the South Pole Station proper was a teeny little dot on the horizon. Just because I wanted to.
Did you see anything? Did you find anything?
I saw what I think it was Buzz Aldrin's quote, "Magnificent desolation." Like they say of the moon, there's probably more to observe on the surface of the moon than there is at the South Pole. There's nothing there.
What'd you eat, by the way? I just out of
Oh,
curiosity.
food? My hat goes off to the culinary crew at the South Pole Station. They had some of the worst ingredients in the world to work with, and I can't complain about any meal that someone makes for me for free and then does the dishes as well.
Respect.
I was very content with the food there. The ingredients that were down in the ice tunnels were atrocious. As far as I was concerned, there was some dump somewhere where they were about to throw out a bunch of waste food, and the Raytheon purchasing agent would say, "Hold on, don't throw that in the dumpster. I'll give you $1."
Yeah, I can only imagine that. And by the way, didn't John Kerry go there in 2016? And
I believe you're
Prince
correct.
Edward went there. A bunch of different people have gone there to just kind of explore.
There's an absurd amount of dignitaries and very important people on the planet that go to these facilities, and it strikes me as extremely peculiar. These folks are normally in very cush environments with a lot of protections. Simply going to the South Pole Station puts one in harm's way that can't be removed. If you lose a plane, if you lose anything in that environment, you're gone. That's it. There is no rescue. They've never rescued anyone.
How bad was turbulence when you were landing or taking off? Is it terrible or no?
It wasn't that bad.
Okay.
It wasn't
Got
that bad. It's more of a random mechanical failure that would typically be the issue.
Just a random mechanical failure, like
that would
60
ruin
people disappeared.
that would ruin someone like John Kerry. So we have these people on pedestals and they operate from these privileged positions. So it's very interesting to me to have them put in such harm's way. They normally do a lot to protect these folks.
Last but not least, HARP, the High Frequency Active Oral Research Program, right? This is something at the University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Yep.
How much credibility is it with what these guys can do with HARP, manipulating weather? I know we talked about it earlier, right, with Sandy, but how much credibility is there behind that?
Tons. Again, it's a very non-transparent program.
Non-transparent program.
Absolutely. Because people can look up what's possible to be done with HARP, even though they don't pretend to be doing it. I actually worked alongside a gentleman who went to the HARP facility in Gakona, Alaska, which I've been to the gates of the facility twice. This gentleman at one point was employed to work on the generators at that facility. I have not spoken to him in depth on this one. I just asked him to come speak to me when he's in town. He agreed to. But this gentleman assured me, knowing the angle that I come from on these things, he said, "You're going to flip out when I tell you how much power they're putting into the atmosphere."
How much?
We didn't get to that part of the conversation
Got
yet.
it. Got it.
But he was the actual generator technician.
Interesting. Do they have enough power? Let's just say, hypothetically, let's say my name is Al Gore and my name is Kerry. You know, my name is a Madam Secretary Hillary Clinton or Obama, McConnell, you know, Bush, whatever you want to call me. I'm that powerful of a name. And I'd like to make an argument for why climate change is really happening to bring up the fear of people around the world. Can I suddenly create a bunch of hurricanes and catastrophic weather storms events around the world to gain more credibility?
Absolutely.
How would I do that? I would use that.
Utilizing the technologies that exist and making a phone call to whatever faction is holding the trigger at the time.
Now, let's just say I know that you have that technology, but I'm your enemy, okay? Or I'm an ally, and you keep doing that, and it affects my country. How come no one's called anybody out?
Politics at a higher level.
Politics at a higher level is more loyal?
Well, you're just saying, how come? And I would just say that there's different levels of the game being played. You know, there are things that happen right before our face every day that just go unnoticed because no one's paying attention to the fact that this does exist. I mean, I'm sure you remember the event on 9/11 in New York. You know what the weather report was the day before? Did you know there was a massive hurricane bearing down on Manhattan for days before the 9/11 event? Do you know where that hurricane was on 9/11? Parked in the ocean. It stopped all forward progress. Do you remember what the weather was like on 9/11? Crystal clear, not a cloud in the sky. And then the 9/11 event occurred, and then look into the weather of what happened to the hurricane. It turned around. If that's not weather manipulation that's observable, that happened years ago, I would just say that people aren't paying enough attention. But these technologies exist. They're being utilized right before everybody's eyes.
Hurricane was about to hit, then it fully stops in the middle of the ocean.
A few years ago here in Florida, you guys had one of these circumstances where the hurricane stopped all forward progress and hung out for a few days.
What event was around that?
I don't recall specifically, but there was within a few years. I remember watching the news, and you guys here in Florida had one of these circumstances where the hurricane just decided to park and hang out for a substantial period of time. This is a new activity. This is not something hurricanes have been doing.
So could this be where we have the technology to even prevent from hurricanes hitting because we know how to park them?
For sure. Yeah, all of the above. Yep. Think of it as it's like having a Nintendo controller for the weather.
Well, then that's actually a good technology similar to a nuclear bomb, because a nuclear bomb, I don't know if you've seen Oppenheimer or not. I don't know if you went through and watched it. Okay. You know, these guys accidentally developed one of the most powerful weapons in the world, but it's only been used how many times? And a lot of people have access, not a lot of people, but many countries, more than a handful, have access to it. And they can single-handedly start World War III.
There have been nuclear detonations going off almost nonstop since the first bomb that went off. Now, were they acts of war? No.
Testing.
But call it whatever you want to call it. We've almost had nonstop nuclear explosions since then. And do people ask why on that?
When's your birthday?
June
June what?
18th.
June 18th. Interesting. June 18th. This has been very interesting, I got to tell you. You know, I feel like I played poker for the last hour and 15 minutes, and trying to see what you have with your hand. Whether it's a 210, pocket aces, pocket jacks. The audience obviously can make a decision for themselves, but one too many interesting stories by a legendary plumber, okay? I will forever say I met one of the smartest plumbers and the most interesting plumbers in the world, and we had him on the podcast. This was great.
I would say my hand was a royal flush then.
Fair enough. Then I got to go all in to see what you have. That's what I got to do, because I want to see the chips. Appreciate you for coming out. Thank you so much.
Patrick.
Thank you for this. I appreciate it. Thank you.